Live from the Ken and Valerie Baker studio at WHYY, this is Studio 2.
On Monday, December 22nd, 3 days till Christmas. Welcome on into the program, friends. I'm Cherry Gregg.
And I'm Avi Wolfman-Arent.
So 'tis the season of gift giving. Combine that with the fact that Americans are living in the golden age of stuff, and our homes are paying the price. Decluttering isn't just cleaning, it is decision-making, relationship management, and sometimes it's grief work. And the tension is everywhere. Parents storing your kids' stuff, adult kids don't want the parent stuff, where couples have turf wars about who gets the closet space. And so today, as we get ready to welcome a whole bunch of new stuff into our homes in the forms of holiday gifts, we got to make some room. So we're going to look at what is worth keeping and who gets to decide. And we have three great guests on the roster for today. And our question of the day is this: how do you declutter? What's your method for deciding what stays versus what goes? And we want to hear from you. The number is 888-477-9499. The email is studio2@whyy.org. And if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, share your comments in the chat. And Avi, I get really nervous this time of year because people give me stuff. And I don't like to, I don't like a whole bunch of stuff. But then, if I already have that thing, I'm like, do I get rid of the old thing and bring in the new thing? Like, what do I do? Do I give that thing that I just got to someone else?
You're a regifter.
What do you do? Dilemmas.
Yeah. Well, that's a bit of a humble brag. You're saying you're so popular, you get so much stuff from people.
No, it's not that. I just keep stuff a really long time, and I don't replace it.
So yeah, but you don't really have a stuff problem overall.
No.
You're pretty good at shedding.
I try to shed. Yeah.
I liked golden age of stuff, by the way.
You like that?
That was a nice turn of phrase.
We
might be in the golden age of stuff. I didn't really think about that, which makes this conversation all the more pertinent.
Our closets are bigger than ever. People have storage facilities now.
Yeah.
And we still don't have enough room for all of our stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Stuff, by the way, comes from the Old French. That's the etymology of the word stuff. Just look that up.
Stuff.
Estoff.
Stuff.
That's from French. There you go. You learned something. At least you learned that. You stick around for the whole hour. Maybe you'll learn more. 888-477-9499. Email studio2@whyy.org. YouTube, Facebook. Drop that comment in the chat. Before we get to the stuff conversation, 3 local news stories for you, starting with this one. The plight of a Chester County chaplain has spurred the Trump administration to investigate, quote, anti-Christian bias inside the Department of Veterans Affairs. The Enquirer published a deep dive today on the case of Rusty Truby. He is an Army chaplain at a VA facility in Coatesville. In June 2024, a year and a half ago or so, he delivered a sermon to a congregation of veterans about a passage in the Bible that calls same-sex relationships shameful. After that sermon, there was some pushback, and according to his lawyers, Truby was temporarily reassigned, and his supervisor asked to pre-screen future sermons. Now, this is all in the past. Truby is back working in his normal function as a VA chaplain. However, his story helped inspire the creation of an anti-Christian bias task force within the VA. This task force work is ongoing. One union leader told the Enquirer that it amounts to, quote, McCarthyism for Christians.
Yeah, it's so interesting because this anti-Christian bias task force, they're coming after folks. They're asking for names or incidents where anyone was reprimanded for displaying a Christian symbol or other types of things. And some interfaith groups have organized against this task force. They argue that it targets those who support LGBTQ rights, and they fear that it will be used to legitimize discrimination and persecution of LGBTQ people and their allies. I mean, this is so interesting to me because, people were always taught like separation of church and state.
Right.
And I get it, if you're a chaplain, but you're still at the same time a military service member. And so it's like, how do you walk the balance of your faith with also, just the rules and regulations of the military.
Yeah, the military chaplain is right there on that line between, freedom of religion and separation of church and state, just inherently, right?
Yeah.
And so not surprising that someone in that role would end up in a case like this, but we'll be keeping our eye on the work of this task force moving forward. Story number 2, Cherry.
Yeah, we've been keeping our eye on the use of GLP-1s, and older Americans are now quitting these weight loss drugs in really high numbers. The New York Times did a roundup of recent studies that show that nearly 47% of people who are over age 45 who were prescribed GLP-1 stopped taking them after a year. That number rises to about 60% for those people who are prescribed the drugs for weight loss. So 47% of those who are prescribed for diabetes quit, and then 60% prescribed the drugs for weight loss quit. And that's a lot of folks. And what's interesting is that older patients were more likely than younger patients to stop taking the drugs, and they were less likely to return to them. And their reasons for stopping the drugs varied. I mean, a lot of them said, gastrointestinal side effects, diarrhea, nausea, all that. Also muscle loss. A lot of them said they watched their muscles sort of melt away and they felt weaker. And so they stopped the drugs. And others just said, look, it's expensive. In Pennsylvania, they just announced that they won't be covering it unless you have diabetes. So no longer will it be paid for just weight loss. Yeah. And so it's going to get really expensive. And also there's a shortage at times. And this is something you have to take all the time. So folks are just saying, you know what, I'm just going to opt out.
And for the local tie here, one of these stories was done by the University of Pennsylvania, Dr. Zeke Emanuel, former Studio 2 guest, by the way.
By the way.
And so, and he was the one that helped come up with these pretty stunning numbers. Like, put that, again, 47% of people over age 65 stopped taking them after a year. 60% who were prescribed for weight loss, a majority of those over 65. And so it's just going to be so fascinating to see what the root cause of this is. Is it just policy, right? Policy leading to high cost. And then if you somehow fix that older people would continue to take the drugs? Or is it this thing about muscle loss?
Yeah, because people felt frail. They felt themselves getting really frail, and they said, no, I don't want to do it.
Right, exactly. And then you cross-reference that with the fact that a lot of the people who need to combat the effects of diabetes and obesity are those 65 and older. Like, that's a group that's at great risk. And so if these drugs aren't really working for that group, then you have to rethink your approach to this entire issue.
And doctors, they're toying with, maybe they can space out the injections.
Microdosing.
A way to kind of keep them on it, but reduce some of the effects of it.
I'm endlessly fascinated by this topic of GLP-1s because it just feels like we're on the frontier of something. In 10, 15 years now, we'll look back and say, wow, there was so little we didn't know at that time.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're going to figure some stuff out soon because lots of folks are taking them, even though there
really are
a lot of unknowns.
And they're very helpful for a lot of people. So we'll be watching this.
Story number 3. In 2025, Cherry.
Yes.
Philadelphians checked out a lot of books from the library.
They did.
But which book did they check out the most? Well, kudos to Philly Voice for digging through the data and finding the answer. The most checked out book in the Free Library of Philadelphia system in 2025 was The God of the Woods.
Wow.
A very buzzy mystery novel by local author and former Studio 2 guest, Liz Moore.
Go, Liz.
And I got to say, Liz is on a winning streak.
She's on fire right now.
There was a recent Taylor Swift docuseries. In one of the scenes of this docuseries, you can hear Taylor Swift listening to an audiobook. And of course, the Swifties were like, we got to find out what book this is. And they very quickly did. And it was The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. So she's everywhere right now. Most popular book in the whole system.
Go ahead, Liz.
By
the way,
Liz.
I read God of the Woods. It was a great read. I also got a shout out.
Sherry Gregg endorsed too. That's the biggest of all of them.
And by the way, I got to shout out Liz Moore because she also wrote Long Bright River, which was adapted into a TV series on Peacock this season. Yep. And it did really well. And Amanda Seyfried, who stars in that series, was actually nominated for her role in that series for a Golden Globe.
Dang.
So Liz Moore is on fire.
blowing up.
And by the way, she is also a mom, wife, and a teacher at Temple University. She teaches creative writing. I want to take one of her classes. Because I'm like, I want some fire too.
Yeah. Are you going to write a mystery novel?
Maybe not mystery, something else. But
Studio 2
fiction.
mystery series?
Yeah, she does creative writing.
Long Bright River, by the way, was 14th on the most borrowed list.
Look at that.
Dang, Liz.
Yeah.
Number 2 on most borrowed, I should point out, was James by Percival Everett.
Yeah.
And also in the top 10 was The Upcycled Self by Tariq Trotter.
Which is really a good book.
Great book.
Yeah.
And so I've not read either Long Bright River or The God of the Woods. Perhaps I should.
Yeah, or listen to the audiobook.
Can I say something real quick, though?
Because that counts, by the way.
This is just a general question for you. I saw Liz Moore on the street the other day, but like we didn't, I could have said hi, but I didn't say hi type of thing. I never know what to do with former guests of the show, whether I should say hi to them or not, because I don't know if they remember being on the show.
And she's really nice.
She's a lovely
really
person.
Cool.
She's a lovely person. I just have this. This has been a recurring issue.
They might give you a hug. They'd be like, Avi, what's up?
Or they could be like, wait, what show again?
No.
Yeah.
No, we're memorable.
Well, maybe in the mental clutter of their mind.
Good transition, AWA.
I'm just struggling with this in general because this has happened with multiple people. Anyways, we're going to talk about decluttering your mind and your life today on the show. We want your thoughts. 888-477-9499. Don't go anywhere.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Studio 2 on WHYY. I'm Avi Wolfman-Arons.
And I'm Cherry Gregg. The holiday season is full of gift giving and receiving. So it's a good time, especially as the year ends, to take stock of what you have, what you really need, and what you can get rid of. I'm talking about all that clutter, and many Americans are overwhelmed by it. 40% report feeling too cluttered at home.
We are so overrun with stuff that storage units are in high demand. And here's a statistic that really stuck out to me from a recent survey. 71% of people said they bought an item again because they couldn't find the original one in all of their clutter. So today, we're going to tackle those stacks of knickknacks, the kitchen gadgets that you never use, the clothes 2 sizes too big or too small, and talk about practical ways to pare down, methods that really work, and why holding on to some treasured items is just as important as tossing them out.
Yes, and in studio with us is Janet Bernstein, a founder and principal of the Organizing Professionals. We also have Julie Morgenstern on the line, an organizing expert and the author of Shed Your Stuff, Change Your Life. Janet, Julie, welcome to Studio 2.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
Great to be here.
We're so happy to have you. We're also happy to have our listeners. We have some questions for you today. How do you declutter? What's your method for deciding what stays versus what goes? Call 888-477-9499. You can email studio2@whyy.org, YouTube, Facebook. Drop a comment in the chat.
And we have a couple callers on the line. We'll get to you in just a moment. But I wanted to sort of open up this conversation, Janet and Julie, with just an understanding of where most people sit. Janet, you go into somebody's house and they hire you. How do you know? What's the line of, you know what, they have a lot of stuff, this is just disorganized versus, okay, they have a serious stuff problem. So walk us in and how you can tell the difference.
when we first go into someone's home, I'm looking for clear pathways. So if someone has a clear pathway in their house, okay, it's not dire. If I'm opening the door and there's just clutter and you're climbing over clutter to get to any kind of room in the house, then we're probably dealing with a disorganizing, hoarding situation that I'm not qualified to deal with. So I'm going to say respectfully, I'm not the professional organizer for you.
Yeah, and Julie, is there something a little less from hoarder, but like, but you can tell like if you don't get it together now, this could really become an issue. Julie?
Yeah, I think the biggest distinction I draw is the difference between the need to organize and the need to declutter. I actually think they're very different processes that we use at different times. So you need to organize if you can't find the things that you need in order to do what you're trying to achieve, right? And so you can have as much volume as you want if you can always find the right mug, the right t-shirt, and not have to rebuy things. That's an organizing issue. I think of decluttering, and the end of the year is such a good time to do decluttering, is about identifying what is truly obsolete in your space and releasing it to make room to move forward. And the turn of the year is like a perfect time to lighten up what is no longer relevant to create the space and the energy and, sort of the determination and the imagination to move forward.
I like
okay,
that.
let me go to the root of this, because I feel like in order for me to get my hands around the solution, I need to know, like, why do I keep stuff in the first place? Or why do we keep stuff in the first place? Help me answer that question, Julie.
Okay, so we hold on to things for lots of different reasons, but think about like life is full of transitions, and transitions, things that we've acquired at one point that made sense, maybe no longer are relevant, but like our life changed not at 2 p.m. on Friday the 19th, but gradually. So things gradually become obsolete, not instantly. And so that's one reason we hold on. And then I think of clutter as, I don't think of it as junk. I think it represents an attachment we are struggling to release. And it could be an attachment to an identity, like pre-kids, now I'm a parent, but I miss those wild and free days. It could be an attachment to a person, or a time in our lives that we're struggling to release. And I think if we go in with kindness rather than criticism at the clutter, we can discover what it represents.
Let me follow up.
And that makes it easier to let go or replace that need with something a little bit more nurturing and nourishing than piles.
Yeah, let me just follow up real quick. How do I keep my attachment to that past identity or that person without keeping the thing?
Well, lots of times we have a lot of things that remind us of that person or a lot of things that remind us of that time. So I say, look at that collection of stuff and say, of all of these things, which most represents that time or that person? And when I look at it, it brings me happiness.
Yeah.
It's not conflicted. And lots of times it's just like one or two things that are the most wonderful symbol that keep the tie without all the excess.
Yeah. I want to remind our listeners at home, on the road, and elsewhere, you can participate in this conversation. How do you declutter? What's your method for deciding what stays versus what goes? You just heard what Julie had to say about that. You can give us a call, 888-477-9499. The email is studio2@whyy.org. And if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, you can drop a comment in the chat. I want to bring in a caller. We have Steve from Downingtown on the line. Steve, you're on Studio 2. What's your method? Share it with us.
It is to take everything out at once, whatever space you're cleaning. I learned this when I got kitchen cabinets, and you have to obviously take everything out of all your cabinets. So now I apply it to closets or anything. You take everything out, then you clean the space, but it's methodical how you put them back. First, you put back what you love. It doesn't have to be useful or practical. You love it. You put that back first. Then you put in what you need or use. And then you look at everything else and decide whether or not it should go back. Huh. And you have to make tough choices of, well, I might need this, I might use it. No, that's the only way, is to make these choices and just have a cutoff.
Thank you. That's Steve from Downingtown.
That was actually very straightforward advice. Yeah.
And I see you, Janet, you're nodding along, because when Avi was talking about this, one of the excuses I hear, well, I might need this thing.
Yeah.
Like, and you heard Steve talk about that. And he says, no, that's not good enough. Your comments and your thoughts about Steve's method.
I love Steve's method. I use Steve's method all the time. My issue with Steve's method is if you run out of time and you've taken everything out of the cabinet, the closet, and all of a sudden you look at your clock and you go, oh man, no time. What do? You shove everything back in because you don't have time. The method works great if you've allocated a significant amount of time to whatever the project is. Otherwise, you're going to shove everything back in and then not take the time again to take everything out and go through it methodically.
And I the other thing that stood out to me about Steve's method is you can feel overwhelmed, because if you look at that closet and that sucker is bursting at the seams and you're like, I got to take it all out. So, I just wonder, so where do you start? Like, if you just say, you know what, this is definitely a problem. I don't know where to even start before we even get to decision making and all that. Yeah. Like, where do you even start?
There's so many methodologies out there. I'm a big believer in just use whatever works for you, but I'm a massive proponent of pacing yourself. So taking things in small bite-sized pieces. So start small. If it's overwhelming, start with maybe the junk drawer in your kitchen, right? Mm-hmm. That is a classic place of just a mess, and you know that you're going to need to do it and you never get around to it. Start small, and even put a timer on, maybe just 30 minutes. That 30 minutes, if you do it 4 times a week, adds up. That's 2 hours of decluttering and organizing you just gifted yourself. So start small, and that gives you the incentive and motivation to increase and keep going on to bigger projects. Maybe like the closet, once you've got some confidence, like, hey, I rock the junk drawer, and now I'm going to tackle my closet. Maybe it's not going to be so intimidating as it was previously.
Stack some wins. I like that.
Yeah.
Let's bring in another caller now. This is Anita from Medford on line 2. Hey, Anita, you're on Studio 2. What are your thoughts on decluttering?
Yes, I've been spending the last year on clearing out a house to sell. And actually, I'm a confessed pack rat, so I had a basement full of stuff and some boxes that I actually hadn't opened from when we moved from Illinois back to New Jersey, and I'm not kidding you, 2007. Actually, it was well worth it to hire service to help go through the stuff, and we sorted it, and I used those big produce boxes from the warehouse clubs. I sorted it into my Donate, St. Vincent de Paul, Goodwill, the Buy Nothing group. Of course, I threw a lot of stuff out. But we literally, the woman that I worked with, Jennifer, we literally just laughed our way through some of the stuff. And
you say laughed?
I'm not kidding you. I moved back from Illinois with about, these moving boxes. They're called lamp boxes. They're huge. Of, I'll call it the Hallmark Christmas teddy bears that were
wow. You had stuff.
Ceramic.
Stuff.
It was quite a collection. It was ceramic cookie jars, mugs, all kinds of things, dishes, and etc. But I did keep one little item. It was a tiny little figurine. And another thing I would say is that before I donate, and it's good for now that you can deduct again on a certain amount of what you donate. You couldn't before. Just as a memory, if you want to keep a memory of something, take a photo.
Yeah.
That's that's interesting.
Thank you. That's Anita from Medford.
I like that she laughed her way through some stuff.
You have to let it go.
And this idea of bringing someone in from the outside to kind of jumpstart the process, that sort of inherently appealed to me, because sometimes it's hard to be self-motivated with this. I'm curious what you think, Julie, about like how to get the decluttering engine revved up, whether it's self-motivation or bringing someone in from the outside. How do you sort of just get that ball rolling?
Yeah. So I think one way to get it going is to define what you're making space for. And I don't mean more physical stuff necessarily. I think I've observed decluttering is the hardest act of all. It's letting go, right? And I have found none of us let go into a vacuum. Nobody lets go of anything without reaching for something else. So first define, I sometimes call it the theme of the next chapter. What are you making space for? Peace of mind, the ability to relax in your home, the ability to, preserve your money by, revealing what you already have and making it more accessible. So what am I making room for? And if you define that and write that down, that is a big motivator. It takes the judgment out. I can't emphasize enough that when we judge ourselves and we're like, we have to get rid of stuff, it's so punitive and you just feel bad. But if you actually look toward what am I making space for, it really makes a difference. And if you get help, I think it's very important you find somebody who is non-judgmental. You cannot have someone come in and say, get rid of this is junk, and push. They have to be there to sort of pace you, help you just or declutter one category at a time. It's another little, I have found tip that really helps is for anybody who's thinking about doing this, first inventory the categories of stuff that are weighing you down, because it's easier to declutter by category than by room.
Yeah.
All my mugs or all my plastic containers that don't have lids. Paper is the hardest thing to declutter, so I wouldn't start with that for anybody.
Yeah.
But your stock drawer. And if you declutter by category and you say, what am I making room for? And the third question I usually ask is, look at that category and ask yourself, if all of this were gone tomorrow, what would I miss? And you write down, and that's your like treasure guidelines. And then it's very easy to let it go.
Yeah. I want to read a couple comments. We have Julie on YouTube who says, my biggest problem isn't just the amount of stuff, but also the lack of storage in my house. A lot of people they don't have enough space. Susan on YouTube says, if you have a wonderful life, it's easy to be sentimental. Attachment sounds sick, right? Attachment. I want to follow up with you, Julie, because a lot of times, this is the holidays, you're getting new stuff. And one of my tricks of the trade was I try to replace things, right? So if I try to get rid of one thing if I bring a new thing in, and maybe if you get a new mug, get rid of the worst mug you have to make space. Yeah. Are there any sort of, as you get ready to bring new things in, should you be sort of taking a note so that you don't get to a place where it's cluttered? And maybe should you get rid of one thing when you bring a new thing in? How do you work that through in your mind?
Yeah, I think that's a great technique to, like, if you're going to bring anything you're going to acquire, the question is, where am I going to put it? And if all your spaces are filled, there's no place for it. So in one, out one. But actually, if you want to declutter and reduce the volume, maybe it's in one, out three, or in one, out two. And that way you actually are creating space within a category.
I want to bring in a caller now who I think is going to set us up for our next guest, who's Emily Stewart, senior correspondent for Business Insider, and has been looking into kind of generational transition and how it factors into this whole conversation. And I think Elizabeth from Morrisville is going to be the perfect person to set us up for that conversation. So Elizabeth, you are on Studio 2. What's your decluttering perspective?
I inherited my mother's china, okay? Spoke with my family, and nobody really wanted it except my granddaughter, who was quite young at the time and didn't really have any place to put it. So I came up with the idea of giving to each of my mother's grandchildren one complete place setting of the china.
Oh.
And that relieves me of more than half of the china. But it also took the onus off of me of having to deal with it later, and put the onus on them because but they don't really have an onus because they are to then, when my granddaughter gets married and has a place, they are to give her their place setting as part of their gift to her from them and from her great-grandmother.
Nice. Generational chain. I like that.
I love that.
That's Elizabeth from Morrisville. Good perspective, good insight. Now let's bring in senior correspondent for Business Insider, Emily Stewart, who's been writing about all the stuff that baby boomers are passing down and why many younger people don't really want it. Emily, welcome to the program. Oh, you're on mute, Emily, or perhaps we're having a problem with your audio. Hopefully,
nope, I'm on mute. There
you're
we
on
go.
mute.
Sorry
There you
about
are.
that.
There's Emily Stewart from Business Insider.
I'm here. Hello.
And so, Emily, you have been exploring some of these generational tensions about stuff, and one of them is you have parents holding on to kids stuff, but also parents trying to give their kids stuff that they don't want. So break it down for us.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I've kind of been working on and off for a year, but like I think especially around the holidays, a lot of people are probably going home to see their parents. I'm calling in from my mother's house. And,
I see the china right there.
That's the kind I don't want. And so, a lot of people, these conversations come up, right, where it's your baby boomer parents, maybe they're aging a little bit, they're thinking about downsizing, they're thinking about moving, or, they're just thinking about time. And they have all of this stuff. It's their stuff, a lifetime of stuff that they have. It's also, they're sitting with their kids' stuff in their basements. And so we kind of wind up in this situation where, I think a lot of families kind of don't want to have these conversations, but we really need to. It's, where it's, this china that's behind me, my mom's been holding on to it for me. Do I want it? What does it mean that I don't want it? And I think, a lot of families are dealing with this, and, it's a tough conversation. Nobody wants to think about kind of what this means, right? That eventually we all die and we can't take all of our stuff with us. And it can be a tough conversation, but one that kind of, I think, families need to have.
Why did you want to investigate this topic now? Is there something about the sort of this moment in time where baby boomers are on their sort of age timeline, where their kids are? Was there something about this moment that made you want to look at this topic right now? Because we've had stuff for a long time. Maybe we have more stuff now, or it might just be, like I said, the ages of the respective groups that made you so curious about this.
I mean, some of it really is, where baby boomers are. We kind of know that baby boomers were like the stuff generation. They were collectors. It was kind of this idea that you wanted to accumulate a lot. And baby boomers are getting to the age now where more of them are saying, okay, it's time to move into a condo. Yep. Maybe I'm moving into assisted living. And, it is also one where, like, candidly, we've gotten like a lot of fun reactions from the audience. Like, I hear from people often. A couple of weeks ago, a man had written me, he was a baby boomer, and he called me while he was in his basement, just going through all this kid stuff and saying, what am I supposed to do with this camping gear? And I have, and complaining. And I think this is very, I think this is something that is really real for a lot of families. And it's kind of, a sad topic, but it's a fun one too, because I think everybody has the story of like, these dolls that sit in this room that I don't want, but I don't know, my mom thinks I should have. I think a lot of people kind of have this experience.
And I thought about I had an old Cabbage Patch, my mom kept it for years. And you think about like,
you
how
mean
do you...
doll, right?
Yeah, doll, Cabbage Patch Kid.
Okay.
Cabbage Patch Kid doll from back in the day. And you think about like, you don't want to bring that with you, but your parents have these attachments. So how do you sort of, did you get any like a rule of thumb from all your conversations, sort of making this a priority? How do folks make the priority and then deal with it?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I think a lot of it is just like starting the conversation. Like, you don't need to, let's say, you go to visit your family. You don't need to spend the entire time talking about like, what are we doing with these things? But like, it is important to start having the conversation. I think it's also, good to be honest with ourselves. If I don't want it now, I might never want it. And what a lot of some of like the professional downsizers I talked to said was like, if you're with your parents and your mom is really insistent you take something, you might just want to take it and like make the rule that she doesn't ask after what you did with it. And then, you can do whatever you want. And maybe you do want to hold on to your Cabbage Patch dolls or the china or whatever. And maybe you don't. And like, she might not really care that much either. She just wants to get rid of that guilt that like, it's not her problem anymore.
Yeah. I like the don't ask me about it after I take it. Don't ask me about it ever again. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can make your own decisions.
And I do think part of this, right, I don't know, I think you came across this in your reporting, Emily, is that this is about, unfortunately, kind of getting out in front of what happens if you don't deal with this and then the person dies. And that there can be this burden, it's emotional and physical burden of like going through all the stuff that was never dealt with. And like you said, this whole topic in some ways is about death and the finality of everything for all of us. Yeah. How did that factor into your reporting and like the approach of the people who were trying to start these conversations?
Yeah, I mean, there is something like, obviously sad to it, but I think like the way I kind of came to think about it is like this can actually be kind of like, not nice, right? But if you do this stuff while, your parents are still around, your grandparents are still around, like it can be funny. Like you had somebody say you kind of laugh.
They were laughing.
Where you start looking around. And even I was talking to a friend recently about she insisted on keeping like all of her notes and books from middle school and high school. And she said, it's funny to go through with my parents and laugh now. I like look at all these stupid little things that I was worried about when I was 13. And then kind of you get to have the memory, you have the process. And then like you kind of feel a little bit better about, okay, like we did it, we talked about it. Now
let it go.
Let it go.
Move on. Let it go.
Make space.
Sort of a ritual in a sense. Well, that's Emily Stewart, senior correspondent for Business Insider. Emily, thanks so much for your perspective today on Studio 2.
Thank you.
We have much more to come this hour.
Callers on the line. We're going to get to you.
We got a lot of people talking about their methods. Susan's is really simple. Susan from Philadelphia says, if in doubt, throw it out. I like a good rhyme. If you've got a good rhyme or some good tips, let us know. 888-477-9499. You can email studio2@whyy.org. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Studio 2 on WHYY. I'm Avi Wolfman-Aaron.
And I'm Cherry Gregg. We're talking about decluttering and how to get rid of stuff and what you might want to hold on to. And with us this hour, we have Janet Bernstein, founder and principal of the Organizing Professionals, and Julie Morgenstern, author of Shedding.
Our question for you this hour is, how do you declutter? What's your method for deciding what stays and what goes? Call 888-477-9499. You can email studio2@whyy.org. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, drop a comment in the chat.
And so let's bring in a caller. We have Jeff from Medford on the line. Jeff, you're on Studio 2. What is your method of decluttering?
Well, I prevent clutter by having a rule that says before I bring anything into the house, I have to know what I'm getting rid of.
Oh.
And that includes socks or a shirt or anything. So it does two things. One, it controls my purchasing because I have to say, gee, what am I going to get rid of that, I need? And the other is it prevents the clutter.
Yeah.
Now you could do you could do this 2 for 1. 2 have to go for every one thing to come in, and that way you're slowly decluttering.
Yeah, I like that.
I like that. I actually like that method that Jeff has.
Yeah, good
Thanks,
idea, Jeff. Thank you so much. We'll bring in another caller now. This is Bill from Mount Airy on line 4. Hey, Bill, you're on Studio 2. What is your decluttering wisdom for us?
The decluttering wisdom is to not get cluttered in the first place. We don't have to have things, and we can find nonprofits that need our time. And if we give money to that nonprofit, or we ask our friends what nonprofits we can give to them instead of a gift, our decluttering would be cluttering the world with love and with progress, with social advancement. And I think that's more important than things at this point.
I love
Thanks,
it.
Bill.
Bill, yeah, Bill has this idea. I like that idea. And I have stuff. If you want to give away stuff or you want to get rid of stuff, how do you sort of decide what to throw away, what to give away, what to sell? Like, how do you, because someone talked about those 3 bins earlier. Julie, like, how do you sort of like decide what goes in what bin?
Yeah. So it's really helpful to first identify where things are going to go and find out, if there are causes or there's an organization that you want to donate to, or people. Sometimes there's certain people that want certain things. So know where they're going to go and check with each of them on what they, their criteria are. And so that kind of helps. We never want to give away anything that, even if you're giving something away to a charity, or even especially if you're giving things away to a charity, that are so used and worn up that it's not going to actually bring kind of dignity to somebody. It's so things that are in good condition is really what you want to give away. And don't be blinded by something that you loved for so long and is so hard for you to get rid of. But someone would look at it as like, this is faded, stretched out. It's really not something very valuable to somebody else. So throw away things that nobody could really use because they've lived their life. And give away things that are in good condition to designated people, and think it through before you start your sorting. So you can have a box for this person, a box for that person, a box for Goodwill, and a box for a homeless shelter, for example. And so you know where it's going before you start sorting, and you have the criteria in your head.
Yeah. And hopefully that answers. Matt from Wynwood had that question about sort of what to do with stuff. So that's some great advice, Matt.
And by the way, I used to always say if I wouldn't give it to my mother-in-law, then I would never donate it. And the mother-in-law, you have a higher little standard for the mother-in-law.
That's a fact. Okay. So I am. Good point, Jerry. Thank you. So it's interesting reading through the comments here because I think some people are motivated to declutter by sort of a positive vision of what their life will be post declutter.
Yeah.
And then other people, it's more of like, I don't want to say negative, but they're decluttering because they don't want to burden someone else with their stuff after they go. So Mary says, my sister died recently and has an overwhelming accumulation of stuff. Me having the responsibility of going through it is my inspiration to deal with my own stuff. Heidi from Doylestown, very similar. I don't want to burden whoever deals with my stuff after I croak, so I have been purging my possessions for the past several years. Yeah. And then Heidi also has sort of a rule of thumb that she uses. But I'm curious about those 2 types of motivation, Janet, and which you think, I guess, how do you determine which is going to motivate a person, or which do you think motivates more people? The sort of positive vision of this is going to be my life post-clutter versus the kind of more negative of like, I just don't want to burden someone else.
I would say it probably depends which stage and phase of life you're in.
Yeah.
If you're a young professional, you're probably thinking about, I only have so much space in my home.
Yes.
So therefore, space is an optimal. So they're probably not thinking about leaving things down the line, but with some of my older clients, for sure, that becomes really, really important. I had one client several years ago who said, I've lived in my home for 50 years, big home, and the only things we've thrown out are the kids.
Yeah.
And she wasn't kidding.
Yeah.
So that was, to her, just being able to let things go and go through the home so that her kids were not burdened. That was their prime incentive to declutter.
Yeah. Steve from Reading called in to say young people can't afford houses anymore and don't have any space. So naturally there's clutter. And so, Janet, I kind of wonder the opposite angle because my mom was clearing out stuff. You got parents, grandparents clearing out things, and you're that young person and you're looking at it and maybe you would want it, but you literally do not have the space. So how do you sort of have that conversation and sort of protect your space so that it doesn't become cluttered?
I see that every single week, and it's definitely a challenge. If the older generation has some space to be able to store a few select items that you would like to have as a younger person later on, that's absolutely wonderful. But often what happens is the older generation is downsizing and moving on, and while the younger generation still is in the small apartment and they don't have the space. I'm reluctant to suggest the storage unit because I think that's just money not well spent. Sometimes it comes up to making just some ruthless decisions. Let's keep a few things that are really special.
Yeah.
And the other things probably need to go. It's not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy. Deb from Chalfont is struggling, says, I'm a collector of beautiful things from the past. With a large house and a big barn, it's hard for me to let things go when I have so much space. But admittedly, I know everything is not special. And also, I always have it if I need something from lumber to ribbon. I tell my relatives to hire professionals if I'm unable, LOL. Let's bring in another caller. This is Martin from Frenchtown on the line. I think Martin just has a question. Martin, you're on Studio 2. What's your question for our experts?
Hey, real quick question. I have a lot of clothing that I would really not want to donate because it is beat up, but I also hate throwing it away because the fabric, is still pretty good. I wonder if there's any organizations that would recycle the fabric into or repurpose it in any way.
Great question. Janet, you're nodding your head. So there are options here?
Yeah, absolutely. The wardrobe downtown, I will accept even used fabric because they in turn will give it to another organization. So any kind of fabric can be donated and used to help see as another organization as well in the local area. There are definitely donations that want the fabric, will do something with it. So if we can prevent things going in landfills, that's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Great advice.
Burvette says, my friend is doing a re-gift swap holiday party. You have to bring a gift you received but don't need.
That's a good idea.
I love that idea. I mean, Julie, any suggestions on sort of fun ways to sort of, you don't want to do a full-scale garage sale, but like you got stuff and you need to get rid of it. A lot of stuff, maybe you're cleaning out the house, you're moving in the condo. We've been talking about that. Any ideas on fun ways to sort of get rid of your stuff, repurpose it, maybe give it to people who maybe you might not have thought of giving it to?
Yeah, that idea of a swap is great. I have a friend who for years has a women's clothing exchange, and everybody brings stuff that they no longer wear or they bought and never wore. It's a no questions asked rule. Nobody asks, why are you donating it? And that there's food, and then everybody just big piles in the floor, and then everybody just sort of looks and tries things on. There's mirrors, and then whatever is not taken by the guests gets donated and carried out that same day to a local women's shelter. So that's a really fun way to do it. The other is, honestly, there are things like Facebook Marketplace and these online places where you can take pictures and post something. It's called like Buy Nothing websites.
Yep.
That's very satisfying. As I was listening to Martin, who's like feels bad, like you don't want to put things in the landfill, and it's good. If you post something on Buy Nothing, it's so satisfying. That's like pick it up by end of today or tomorrow, and it goes to someone in your neighborhood who really could use it. And you feel so much less guilty. You feel like it's getting a good purpose, and it's not even someone you knew, but it's someone in your area. So I find that to be very satisfying.
Erica writes in and says, I second the idea of photographing items that you don't want to keep. My husband photographed a lot of genealogical papers and photos inherited from his parents before throwing them away. That's an interesting idea, right? It's almost like a half letting go in some ways, or maybe it's a 75% letting go. Like, I'm going to get rid of the object, but maybe it helps me psychologically to know that there is some record of it that I can still reference. I'm curious if Janet, you find that has helped people?
100%. Even for children's artwork, that's a big deal for a lot of parents. And you can digitize so much of that. And there's even a company called Artifacts, and they will take the digitized copies and make cute little books. So instead of all this massive portfolio of artwork that you get in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, it's just condensed into one neat little book. How great is that?
Yeah.
Taking photos is absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, let's bring in another caller. We can squeeze them in. Jennifer from Medford is on the line. Jennifer, you're on Studio 2. What's your method for decluttering?
Hi, I have a slightly different take on this. I'm 66, so I'm in the middle of this. But my parents were both born in 1920. Mm-hmm. They lived through the Depression. They lived through World War II. And when they married and started the family in the 50s, as on the verge of middle class, buying stuff like china and the vase and all that were extremely important and luxury. Yeah. And they were the first generation that can do it. So when my mother's grandchildren were the right age, I said to them, if Nanny says to you, do you see that vase? Do you see that china? Would you like that? Do you think you might like to have that someday? The correct answer is, Nanny, I love it. I will take good care of it, and thank you.
Wow.
And then, whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
But I felt it's so important to respect where that came from. I mean, my parents were both raised, one Southwest Philly, one, they were the first generation to really be able to have luxury items.
The symbol of those objects,
Yes, and now we're talking about it as burdens and how you don't want to leave it and all that. I also think part of life is dealing with the end of someone's life.
Yeah.
And making that person have to give away stuff that still matters to them because they're old or they're downsizing, I think we can do better.
Yeah.
That's an
Thank you,
interesting
Jennifer
point.
from Medford. The respect of how much, what it meant to be able to buy something
and
like a vase.
I do think, Julie, we do have to navigate that, right? If someone really wants me to have something and that thing doesn't mean a lot to me, perhaps it's incumbent on me to figure out why they really want me to have it. And it could be, like in that case, a symbol of we made it as a family. It could be that this is a reminder of struggle, whatever the reason. I'm just curious, like, you really have to, it feels to me like you just have to have that conversation somehow, some way.
100%. That's the opportunity, is to have the conversation, to go through it. If someone is saying, to ask the question, what does it mean to you? And that's where objects can trigger stories and trigger connection. And you get under the hood of, it's just stuff. It's never just stuff. So I agree. Interestingly, my mom, who has just turned 90 and is in Philly, she's in Wynwood.
Hey, happy birthday, Mom.
She wanted to give away a lot of things while she was alive. And it was very uncomfortable for all of us. I'm like, Mom, I don't want to think about that you're doing this because when you're gone. And she was like, no. Like, I want to have the joy.
Yes.
Seeing of giving it to you. But I want you to come and figure out what you want. She had every one of her kids and grandkids come in, and thank God there were no conflicts.
Yeah.
Like there was everybody wanted this one object. And it was uncomfortable for me, I have to say. And then I was like, I went with her logic, which is, I want the pleasure of seeing what is meaningful to you and what you're going to take. And her apartment's still her, and it still has stuff that's meaningful to her, but she shed while alive. And it was very positive.
Yeah. By the way, I love that story as well. Linda from Delco commented, for all the people trying to upcycle their clothing, they can donate to greentreetextiles.org. If the clothing isn't wearable, then they can make it into housing installation. So there's a lot of reuses for that. And by the way, Edie, who donates stuff to charity, says, I am feeling lighter without all this stuff.
I'm feeling lighter after this conversation. Yeah. Thank you to Julie Morgenstern, author of Shed Your Stuff, Change Your Life. Julie, it was a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Great to be here with you all. Thank you.
And same to you, Janet Bernstein, founder and principal of The Organizing Professionals. Janet, it was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and thank you to everybody who called in. A lot of great advice. A lot of folks who wrote in. Thank you so much. And thank you, of course, to our producers, Debbie Builder, Andreas Copes, and Hazel May Bryan. Thanks to Mike Schiffler, our visual producer, and to Diana Martinez and Tina Calicay, who engineered today's show. Our executive producer is Kevin McCory from Studio 2 here at WHYY in Philadelphia. I'm Cherry Gregg.
I'm Avi Wolfman. Don't shed this show.
No,
we'll be back tomorrow.
And tomorrow at noon here on Studio 2, as we close off the year, we'll take a look at the biggest and weirdest headlines. What stories moved the greater Philadelphia area? Who did we mourn? And what was there to celebrate? We'll look back at 357 days of news.
Very specific.
Yeah.
SEPTA, state budget, tush push. Wouldn't make my list, but maybe it'll.
I don't know.
Maybe it'll make it into the show. Which story stuck with you this year? Email studio2@whyy.org. Join us tomorrow at 6 or 7. No, at 12 o'clock. Coming up. It's Here and Now.